everybody, Bonehead from the Bonehead Podcast, and welcome to the monthly meta. This is our monthly show where we have a look at the last few weeks of competitive Blood Bowl and see which teams are doing the best at winning and are the most popular. So if you're planning on heading to a Blood Bowl tournament in the next few weeks, you'll know what you're likely to face against and which teams are doing particularly good at the moment. Now, we used to cover what's legal, as in what's available in Blood Bowl at the moment, but taking on some feedback from you guys, we're just going to skip that bit, focus on the tournament results for this video, and as and when new things for Blood Bowl land, you know we're going to cover them anyway. So if you follow the channel, you'll be up to date anyway. So let's have a look at what's lethal. Okay, so let's have a look at which teams are performing the best over the last few weeks of competitive Blood Bowl. Right, my face goes there, this bit comes up here. All right, fantastic. So let's get straight into it. Down one spot from last month, it's Ogres. Oh my god, Goblins got off the bottom. So last month, if you watched the channel, you'll know that I massively screwed up my data and put Goblins like at number one. Turns out if you kind of ignore a whole bunch of numbers, that can in fact be the case. It wasn't the case, and I had to do a correction video, which was quite entertaining. But look, this month I've checked the data, the formulas are working, and Goblins over the last period have lifted themselves up the bottom, like Neo getting up off the ground after being shot by Agent Smith. Guess what I watched this week? Right, Ogres have dropped down to 36% in the last period, and Goblins have climbed up to 29th place with a 39% win rate. Now, when you look at these kind of rates and winnings and stuff like that, whoa, my face. You want to kind of keep them in that what we call the golden zone, right? Between 45% and 55%. Around about 50, but with a bit of flex, okay? That's the gold zone. These teams are sitting way outside of that, so not ideal. Now, Goblins and Ogres, they're stunty teams. They're not meant to perform brilliantly. Ogres have had some really good periods where they've been able to just kind of like fudge in Griff. Right, Ogres with Griff was really great for a period of time, but now we're seeing that star players are getting toned and banned and taxed out of oblivion, which is probably appropriate, but it does mean that these stunty teams start to suffer. Ogres, Goblins, Black Orcs at 28. Black Orcs have stayed unmoving. Black Orcs are a really tough one. Like, I love them in League. They're really, really, really potent. But when it comes to tournaments, even though they're a tier 2 team and they do get classified as even lower in those formats that make up and add other different, you know, more tiers to that, they just need a lot to get cooking. In all honesty, I think the Black Orc roster needs a couple of runners, like just a positional, you know, similar to like the Lizards got the Chameleon Skink as an interesting role. Black Orcs need a little bit of spice, just a little bit of extra scoreability. But they are a tough team and they are a great one to play, and they are one of the starter teams in this edition. So you will see a lot of new players get the box, run nobility, run Black Orcs, and run into difficulty. And down 6 spots, you see the other one, Imperial Nobility at 43%. So still a couple of 300 games played by both of these teams, but win percentage in the 40s. Nobility are a tough one as well. Black Orcs, you can buy everything. You just don't quite have enough zest. Imperial Nobility, you can't buy everything. So you're looking at kind of like a 1.15 million build before you can take all the positionals and the Ogre and some rerolls and stuff like that. And then you kind of, you don't get the ability too much. You have to give up quite a lot to take anything really good when it comes to star players. So nobility suffer a bit there. Nurgle down 3 spots. We're going to go all the way up to 45%, and Halfling up 1 little spot there. So Halflings have been one of the most honest stunty teams in this edition. They've stuck around the 20s. They've had spikes where star players are more available, and they've had pivots. Do you know what? That's fine. Nurgle, again, when it comes to tournaments, they need a lot of skills, so they do brilliantly in League. They do brilliantly in League because with their suite of skills, their durability, the regeneration, they just slowly get there. It's very, very, very Nurgle. When it comes to tournaments, Nurgle can be very potent, and they are a fantastic tier 2 challenge. In fact, I would say Nobility, Black Orc, Nurgle, all of those teams can do brilliantly. They can go very well, and you can run really well with them. But they do need quite a lot of stars, a lot of skills, a lot of star player points to make it happen. Right, as we tick into the Goldilocks zone, it's Gnomes up 3 spots at 45%. Look, Gnomes, another tier 3. We've had almost all the tier 3 ones now. They're doing well. They're up a little bit. They're probably sticking around where they want to stay. We've seen this in Beachhead, where we had a gnome team run the gamut, go 5-0 and take the day. They've got a good suite of star players available to them, and they are remarkably durable because of that easy access to dodge, and that combination with wrestle means that actually they are tough to put down. The thing is with gnomes, if you can actually power them to the ground, they tend not to get back up again. So gnomes pretty tough, but a really good fun roster, and can spike win. I mean, that all guard roster is doing work with Maple as well. Yeah, it's a great combination. Down 13 spots, we've got Norse at 46%, and down 13 spots as well, we've got Snotlings at 47%. So Snotlings, have round out our tier 3 stunty teams here. They spiked really high. Like, that's fantastic for them last month, but not the case of where they want to be. Norse dropping 13 spots there, dropping from what, 10, 11 down to 23, is a huge hit. And the fact that that's not a small amount of games played either. That's nearly 600 games, and they've come in with a windfall. Windfall means good? I don't know. They've just come in with a dearth of wins there, and that's a heck of a drop from Norse. Look, Norse are a consistent team. They belong in the 10 to 15 realm, so them underperforming a bit at the moment. They're not particularly vulnerable to star players. You don't get a chance to take star players with Norse all the time. Like, they've got a roster that doesn't need them, so that's quite an interesting spot as well. And then you've got Chaos here, Chaos Chosen, down 6 spots into the bottom third, 47% wins. 500 games though, still getting a ton of stuff in there. Now, all these games, all these teams we've seen from gnomes upwards, they're all within the Goldilocks zone. 5% is not a lot of games. If you think about the way these games are kind of added up, you've kind of got the draws in there as well. So a 50% team is a win, a loss, and a draw. So if you're looking at a 45% team, you're kind of looking at, like, what, 20 wins, 22 losses, and 18 draws. Like, it's really close. So it's not the end of the world. Chaos dropping makes sense. They also struggle, not as much as Noga, but up there as well. Snotlings fair. The only surprise down here is Norse having such a bad month. Okay, so this is going to take us to the top 20 now, 11 through 20. I went back and double checked the stats, and yeah, Norse and Snotlings were really up there in the last round last month, but this month they have just dropped out of favour. So let's move a little face and let's crack on with the roster. So 20th, we've got Khorne sticking put at the 20th spot and 47% win rate. Look, Khorne can be insanely potent, but they are very much at the whim of the dice. Like, you can play some really consistent and strong games with Khorne. Defensive Khorne, so brutal at times. We've seen BT try and smash a load of good Khorne games in there, but you know, you need all the block you can take, which means you don't have a huge amount of ball skills there as well, so it makes Khorne a little bit vulnerable. Khorne are an interesting one. I actually quite like the Khorne matchup with Skaven. They can overcome. Now, you're going to get battered all over the place, but they can overcommit. Frenzy into follow-ups. You can set up some situations that don't work, and then it doesn't take much for the ball to be whooped in and taken there by Skaven, who we are talking about, who are slightly above Khorne, but a bit of a drop there from Skaven, down 3 spots. Now, Skaven in this edition are really interesting because they are reasonably pricey but reasonably cheap, so you can't ever really get any star player access without giving up quite a bit of stuff. With Skaven, they need a bench. I mean, they are still a very potent team. And this is the really interesting thing, right? We're seeing Norse drop, we're seeing Skaven drop. So what you can see is that we've always said this, right? On any given day, any team can beat any other team. And Skaven taking a bit of a loss there as well. Chaos Dwarves up 4 spots, but still down in 47%. The new Chaos Dwarf roster is worse than the old one in terms of power. I think it's slightly more interesting, the old one. We've done this. You're seeing them in the league at the moment, and I think we've run a couple of match play rosters as well. They're still really good. And this is it. Like, we're seeing such a close percentage of these teams, and it makes a lot of sense. I think that's the takeaway from this month, is that the pack feels like it's getting a little bit tighter. Maybe I'm just feeling optimistic because Goblins got themselves off the bottom. But Chaos Dwarves up a little bit. Are they better than Skaven in this edition? I would argue they are not. but I'd probably argue that about most teams. Down 10 spots, Dwarfs. What on earth is going on this month? So Norse are down 13, Dwarf are down 10, so they've fallen straight out of the top 10, and so have Renegades. Now, Renegades makes kind of sense. They can spike. They don't have a lot of core skills, so you have to over-invest in them. So if you end up in a spate of tournament situations where the gold's a little low or the skill package is a little low, it can hurt Renegades. Interestingly, though, if you go into a format where the gold is a little low and the skills are a little low, it tends to benefit Dwarves. Dwarves don't have the speed to keep up, so we've seen some really good tournament runs from Dwarves, but they're hard to win the tournament with. They're not hard to come away with a 2-1, but they are consistent, they are controlling, but they don't have the speed to catch up if you get stuck behind. Renegades can snowball one way or the other as well, I suppose. Lizards up 2 spots, up to 49% win rate. I mean, that's kind of where Lizards have sat. They've sat at the middle of the pack, middle to top of the pack. They are another team that needs some core skills, like block or sure hands. Can't really take sure hands on the team because it will normally be a double. Block, we're seeing kind of get limited to 2 or maybe even 4 times, which makes it a little bit tougher for the Saurus, for the misery line. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think Lizards are probably about where they belong to be. Now, we've got a couple of big changes coming here. Up 10 spots, we've got Orcs. So we love Orcs. Orcs are the tier 2 sleeper here. They are such a powerful team. They are at the top of tier 2. Games Workshop dropped them and the human team down from tier 1 into tier 2 about the first year of 2020 Blood Bowl. And Orcs are just one of that classic teams that just does not need a lot. Now, they don't have a huge amount of speed. Like, the Blitzers are the fastest players they've got at movement 6, edge 3+, and no dodge except on a double. But you've got 4 of the movement 5 big uns now, makes them really powerful. 4 of those guys, maybe a troll, and 4 Blitzers as well, which are just hard as heck. Great all-rounders. Orcs are probably... Right, Skaven's obviously my favourite team of all time, but when it comes to looking at a team that I actually think is really, really, really good, I'd say a little underrated in the way of tiers, but not underrated in the way of coaches. Orcs, it's great to see them performing well. Now, down 10 spots, we've got Dark Elves, and this is really interesting because Dark Elves have absolutely floated at the top because they are another team that don't need a huge amount of investment, but they are quite pricey. So if your tournament value comes down, your skills come down, Dark Elves kind of lose a little bit of that resilience, but they're still performing above average. So we've got 13th spot for Dark Elf. They've dropped completely out of the top 5, but they're still a 51% win rate. Up 1 spot, we've got Humans, which are the other of the tier 2 sneaky teams, and I think that's probably about right. Humans, I'd argue, were over-egging it a bit at the moment. The benefit of Humans, the roster is fine. Like, you can put, they're a solid mid-range team, but they're a little cheap, which means you can often take a little bit of star player with them, or you can go max on skill cap. They're a very flexible team, which is what you expect Humans to be. Down 3 places, Undead have dropped out of the top 10, still posting a 52% win rate. But yeah, I mean, Undead are another really solid tournament team that don't need a huge amount. Because you can take 4 ghouls at anything, basically, what, 1.1 million or other, you can find a way to take all 4 of your ghoul pack. That means you've got 2 blockers, 2 strength 5 pieces, and up to 4 block dodge pieces as well. It means they've got all bases covered. And if you watched the game I played with Milton the other week, Chaos Dwarves versus Undead, you will see how egregiously overpowered the mummies can be. Okay, so that takes us to the top 10, and let's see what we've got. Okay, right, 10th. We are down 6 places, and it is Necromantic Horror. Now, this is a really interesting one because Necro are a very expensive team. They're a very expensive team. We run our tournaments at 1.1 million, most of the time 1.15, and Necro suffered there. I think the worst environment for Necro to be is the one where you get skill buy. You don't see that format quite so popular anymore. I think Amazon's made it miserable for people for quite a long time. But Necro are a very high performing team when you can afford to get all the pieces. So if we see tournaments that have a higher team value, Necro start to boil up and do really well. Now, they've dropped 6 spots, but this is the 2nd month in a row where they are fitting in the top 10. They're a tier 2 team. They're challenging. They're costly. They don't have a huge amount of the core skills, but they perform really well. Now, a team that's cheap and does have all of the core skills is Underworld. They've dropped 8 spots as well, which means we've got some real high climbers coming up here. Underworld, look, Underworld have posted #1 for the most of this edition. I don't think they've dropped off the top spot in total wins yet. So Underworld are still performing brilliantly. We'd lost the Snotlings for Underworld. We lost Swarming for Underworld. They lost something else. Can't remember what it was. You've got Hackflem have a price increase because of Underworld. But it doesn't matter. The core roster, because it's Skaven mixed with a bunch of cheap stuff, it just works brilliantly. Now, up 11 spaces, we've got the first of our teams of legend. We've got the High Elf roster. Now, the High Elf roster's sat around in the top 10, top 5 for most of Blood Bowl 2020. It's really interesting because you look at the roster and you think, okay, it's a slightly better, like slightly higher armored Elven Union team. Well, it turns out that when you are Edge 2+ and just very effective at what you do, having a bit more armor can make you a bit more resilient. They're an expensive team, but that extra pip of armor on the lineman, basically, it just kind of free rolls you an extra player or two, which just keeps your team performing. You only need 7 elves to pull off a pretty effective scoring drive. So having high elves there with the core fundamental being they've just got better armor, means you've got more players, which means they keep in it, which means you've got the consistency there to pull off your elf nonsense. So, and as a big high elf fan, I'm happy to see that. Down 2 spots, a 56% win rate here. We've seen a very lopsided month. Like the middle of the pack was quite close, but you're seeing some big numbers here. 773 games played with vampires over the last month, coming in at a 56% win rate. This is a monstrous showing for vampires, both in terms of numbers and wins. So vamps are great. They are the most interesting thing to happen to Blood Bowl for a really long time. I love they brought Bloodlust back. I love they shook up the positionals. They just made it really interesting, and it gives coaches a way to play that suits their style. If you want to go offense, you go blitzer and Varg and just murder. If you want to go fancy, you play some runners and some throwers and just do kind of old school vampire stuff. I love the vampire roster. If you're going to be playing in a tournament, better brush up on hypnosis or hypnogaze, because that's going to be it's going to come up. I think if you end up playing, if you're running vampires, you've got to study anyway. But if you're coming up against vampire teams, and it looks like from the numbers there you might do, then it's definitely worth doing a bit of studying. So up 5 spots to 6, we've got Wood Elves. Wood Elves are back. So we've got High Elves and Wood Elves in the top 10 here. Wood Elves have done pretty well this edition. They did struggle at the beginning, where it kind of became a bit of a bash fest for a bit. Wood Elves just did not have the the resilience to survive. But the only thing people hate more than a gutter runner is a war dancer, and the Wood Elf team is just war dancers, right? So this, however, the next bit is my absolute favorite. Slann up 20 places into the top 5, 57% win rate, only 258 games, sure, but dude, Slann in the top 5 is wicked. So if you don't know what Slann is, Slann are a race of frog people from Warhammer. They used to be in Blood Bowl, then they went away, then the Blood Bowl community brought Slann back into the game. They were repurposed as Kislev in Blood Bowl 2, and their shtick is that they are basically a team made of human linemen that have the ability to leap without any downside at all, other than if they fail and hit the ground. It's such a clever team. I love running Slann. Their little catchers they've got there, movement 7, edge 2+ with Pogo and Leap, means that they are just 2+ bamfing around. It's such a cool team. And I think as you progress in your career of Blood Bowl, you play the core teams, then you start finding some tier 2 challenges. Wholeheartedly recommend Slann, and I don't know how much longer Slann are going to be around, so definitely start cramming in some games if you can. Right, we've got more elves coming in, and in at number 4, up 8 spots, we've got Elven Union. So everything I just said about high elves being better than Elven Union, apparently just totally ignore that. EU are fast. If they can dash, they can do it. If they get bashed, they can't. Elven Union are very tough to run in League. They're great fun. Your elves are just elfin. This gives you a bit of an advantage in tournaments. I remember we were playing with Rick, and he was like, I love playing elves in tournaments because if I fail my 5+ cage dive, I've got a reroll, but if that goes wrong, I don't lose my player because I'm just going to get them back next round. So it's not the end of the world. So you can pull off shenanigans. Elven Union, I would say, have a very high upside. They have a quick crash, but love to see them up here as well. We're really seeing some different teams performing well. Although, one of the other teams that has stayed in the top 5 quite a lot is Tomb Kings, which is our second of the teams of legend. So we're waiting for Tomb Kings, we're waiting for High Elves, waiting for them both to be retooled. And that's going to be a really tough one for Games Workshop, because if you look at the stats, Tomb Kings have been in the top for quite a lot. High Elves have been, I think, the second team overall for quite a long time. So they are going to be looking at that thinking, I don't know how much we want to change. Now, I don't care. Bring out some great new models, maybe tweak a little bit just to give us a new challenge, but I think that's really cool. Tomb Kings there are just the kings of consistency. For a team that's got Edge 4+, and that's it, you have to play them tight. And when you play them tight, they reward you. And I think Tomb Kings, look, if you are looking for a Blood Bowl challenge that's going to teach you more about the game, pick up a Tomb King team. Realm of Paths is a great one. Punga obviously do the shiniest. And they will teach you positional Blood Bowl. They will teach you how to just assume the dice are going to fail you all the time. And you also get 4 strength 5 big guys with no nega traits. Yeah. They're movement 4 as well. Love the Tomb Kings, and I love their Tomb Guardians. Up one spot is Amazons. Look, Amazons came back, and they just have come back with a bit of a passion. So I think they're posting some of their best tournament results in the last few months. They've always been good in this edition. Like, they were great in their old format. They got reduced, revamped, and just brought out a much more interesting format. You look at the Amazon roster now, and you go, okay, I can play this tight and use my dodge and turn the team into a bit of a bash team like the old way. And you can kind of look at the hit and run piece. You've got the strength 4 blocker. You've got the fact that the roster's cheap enough so that sometimes if you've got access to star players, you can take draw and dribble or one of the other pieces. Amazons are one of the most interesting teams, I think, for tournaments when it comes to builds. Now, we saw a couple of these do very, very well at Beachhead. I feel like it was 2nd and 3rd were Amazon teams, something like that, with a couple of different roster builds as well. We had one draw and dribble, and we had one just vanilla try-hard build. Amazons are really, really, really tough. And it's interesting to see loads of Amazon teams being played at the moment. Dwarves, not... you expect to see Dwarves take a little bit of a boost up, being the only tackle team now, but they did not. Right, this is really wicked for this month, and number 1 is OWA. So Old World Alliance. Old World Alliance is a rubbish team. If you look at it on paper, you think this is just worse elements of everything else. But by the power of Voltron, the team comes together brilliantly. And the most successful builds with OWA, you can either sneak in a star player to help you out, or just take what is essentially a human team with a Troll Slayer, maybe a Dwarf Blitzer to back you up. OWA are a very interesting team to run, but because they've got different composites and different components, they can actually play really tight and win some really solid games. If you watched the Bonehead Championship last season, you'll see just how little you need for OWA to come together and win it all. All right, so we looked at the most winningest teams over the last period, over the last month. Now we're just going to look at the top 10 most popular. So if you are planning to go to a tournament, you know which teams are performing really well right now, and then you're going to know which teams you're likely to see. So we're just going to hit the top 10 here. So number 10, we've got Dark Elves, 571 games over the last month. Norse, 588 games over the last month. Dark Elves have got a little less popular, but still posting really top numbers. Norse a little bit more popular and posting around the same numbers as Dark Elves here. Now, both of those teams, you don't need a huge amount to add to the team. They're not star player heavy. Those are teams that you take to your league and you take the same models to a tournament and you run them in a very similar way. That gives you an advantage there all around. Skaven at number 8, staying put, 641 games. Humans down 2 spots, but still sitting in the 600s. At number 7, 2 more than Skaven. If I'd gone to a tournament, we could have got Skaven up there. Damn free time. Amazons down 2 spots to 6 with 652 games. And then we go up. So even though Dwarves have dropped down the winning rankings, they've actually climbed the popularity rankings. Now, as we were going through the teams that are performing best, you've got Elves, you've got Elven Union, you've got Wood Elves, you've got High Elves. All of those teams love a little bit of dodge. And then you've got Amazons, another team that loves a little bit of dodge. So you expect to see people go, okay, cool, I can counter this. We can bring Dwarves, we've got the tackle, we can make some incidental blocks and just maybe get an extra couple of removals. And that is what? That's a minimum of 100k TV swing. So I'm not surprised to see people bring in Dwarves. And I actually think we're going to see Dwarves get better as people get more used to counterplaying with them, but we will see. Right, up into the 700 club now. We've got Undead coming in at 738 games, down 2 spots, but up to 4th, and then Vampires up 7 places. Whoa, the top teams have got some numbers. Right, Vampires, 773 games. This is the most popular Vampires I think have ever been. Now, normally a team releases and then they kind of get popular after 6 months and stuff like that. Vampires have been out for a while now, but they just offer such a delicious tier 2 challenge. They are powerful, and it's the kind of team that you can learn how to win with as well. They are fun, they're flavorful as you like. The models are really good. You can pick up the Games Workshop team. Most people have got a Vampire team kicking around anyway from all the third-party pieces, or obviously you can go the brute fun route. Vampires are great fun, and I'm not surprised to see them as popular as they are. I'm a little bit surprised by these numbers, though. I'm not surprised by the teams, but the amount of games being played. Up one spot is Orcs and Necromantic, 952 games. Orcs, 942 games. Necromantic have stayed the most popular team in Blood Bowl. So I would have to say that Necromantic, all right, OWA take the win. Absolutely. They're winning the most, but definitely not the most games played. If I was asked to say what do you know, this is the top three here, Necromantic, Orc and Vampire. I think are probably the three hottest teams in Blood Bowl right now. Necro, super popular, super upside to learning it. Same with Vampires, and Orcs are they're just so consistent and so solid. Do you know what? The same is true of Undead. Do you know what? There's no bad team in Blood Bowl. We saw the first page of the last 10 teams, and yeah, they're a tough challenge. But otherwise, everything else is absolutely solid. Look at that. Nearly 1,000 games over the last month with Necro and Orc. Oh, I can't wait to do the first one where we tick over 1,000. Okay, so that is the wrap up of the monthly meta, the last month in competitive Blood Bowl. The big takeaways, do you know, there is one really big takeaway, which I think everybody can kind of take to heart. What we're seeing when it comes to results is something that we've seen through all editions of Blood Bowl, and generally speaking, any element of any competitive sport. If you take a team, you take an angle, you take a sport, whatever, and you learn it, you will get significantly better at it. Now, Blood Bowl, the teams that are doing really well, you've got OWA, Tomb Kings, which on paper are just worse than other teams. But you learn how to compensate for the downsides, and they almost go away. And it just frees you up to just take those wins. So I would say, if you're looking to run a team in a tournament, there are some really good basic ones that you can run. But when it comes to Blood Bowl, any team can win any game. So really take the team you enjoy playing, because that's the one you're going to be more interested in learning how to play well with. If OWA can do it consistently, if Tomb Kings can do it consistently, pick a team. Pick a team you enjoy playing. Pick any of those teams and get them there, because that is the biggest takeaway from this month of Blood Bowl, is that if you learn it, you're going to net extra wins. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Where's the stop button? No, there it is.